Hello and welcome to Goonies World. My name is Goonie, also known as Colin, and I'm joined as always by Meanie, also known as Ryan.
Hello everybody.
And Johnny Pharaoh, also known as Sean.
Hey, that's me. Goonie, are we doing something special tonight?
Yeah, tonight, whatever, is going to be quite a different episode than you're used to, because we're not going to be playing any game at all. We're going to actually play another podcast, and coming up here in a minute. And as you can see from the description, it's called Dickey Newton. The name might change in the future, but for now it's called Dickey Newton, and it's an audio drama that I've been working on. We're just going to play the pilot episode, which is, it's kind of like an advanced screening or early release. It'll be exclusive for just the Goonies World listeners, because the plan is to do a bunch more of these and have a full season and release those as a separate podcast.
It's our first spinoff. Yeah, it'll be our first spinoff.
Yeah, and unfortunately, so this first episode, I did it all by myself, like just to see if I could. I wanted to, write it and record it, edit it, and do music for it all on my own. So, which I did, but unfortunately, it means that Plunger and Chip are not in it. But however, they are in the second episode, which is done, and someday you'll hear that, hopefully. And I'm working on the third episode, writing it right now. It's going at a snail's pace, so I think it'll be a while. I want to get them all done and then release them, so I don't have to worry about doing them, get them whenever I release it. I want to have it all finished, so sometime next year. For now, I wanted to release this first episode because it does take place during Halloween, and thought it would be appropriate. However, this isn't our Halloween special.
No, that's next week.
Yeah.
And when you say
to have our Halloween specials,
we do. And when you say Dickey Newton, just in case somebody, and Plunger and Chip, on the off chance that somebody has not listened to any of our Jupiter Springs episodes, these are characters we originally created in Ryan's Kids on Bikes game. I think Ryan ran it first, wasn't that right, Ryan, or was it me?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
No,
I don't even remember.
It was you, Sean.
Really? They all blend together now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did it first, and then I did it second, and then I did, at some point, then we did Hardgate. I don't even remember. It's been so many episodes and so many series and so many spin-offs.
We have done many.
I think it's safe
in the Jupiter Springs universe. Yes.
We have. And I think the Jupiter Springs universe in general, like those episodes, well, and Hardgate was kind of a spin-off, but I think the central sort of Plunger, Dickey, Chip episodes were sort of all in the family, and the Dickey Newton episodes are sort of Maud.
Right. Yeah, for those of you who are over the age of 40 and know what the hell he's talking about.
I don't even...
Johnny doesn't even know what the hell... Shit. Yeah. No, but we've played a lot in Jupiter Springs. It was kind of boring on the podcast. We've been gaming together for decades, but that was really the first, setting that was sort of born on the podcast. And we've, of course, played Jupiter Springs games with our regular off-mic group, but it's become one of our favorite settings and probably the one we've played the most on this podcast, wouldn't you guys say?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we did a fair number of Demon Lord episodes just because it was easy and it was published and I didn't have to really do a lot of prep. Right. So I did a lot of that early on, but I would say Jupiter Springs has easily eclipsed that, especially when you consider, the Hardgate episodes and all of that stuff. So
yeah. So I'm looking forward to hearing it again. I've of course heard it, and looking forward to debuting it here. So.
Yeah, and I thought since this is going to be a shorter episode, we can at least fill some time by doing a little bit of a listener mail segment. Because we
actually have got some emails.
We finally got some emails. Yeah,
received 2 recently, and I thought they were relevant because they both mentioned Jupiter Springs. So I thought I would read those. This first one, I've already responded to this guy. He says, "Hello guys, I just wanted to take a minute to let you know how much I've been enjoying your show. Over the last few months, I've listened to about 90% of your back catalog, and I look forward to getting all caught up to the rest of them. I especially enjoy the Kids on Bikes / Jupiter Springs stories. I hope you're not finished with that world. Keep up the incredible work."
Awesome. I would say we're definitely not finished with that world, and we'll be coming back to it at least several more times before all is said and done.
I would say that as long as we're still doing this podcast, we'll always come back to Jupiter Springs in some form.
I would agree. And I know who wrote that. His name is G. I mean, that's what I always called him back in the day. I won't list anybody's real names on the show. We decided not to do that because we didn't get permission to read their emails. But G, shout out to you. He's the creator of the name Captain Buck Goodsense. He made that up for our Star Wars game back in the late 80s, and I adopted it over the years. But we're glad you're listening, G.
Yeah, he also said, "Long live Captain Goodsense."
That's right. Yeah.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this next one I haven't answered. I told them I was going to read it over the episode. But he writes, "Have Plunger and Dickey ever seen Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter? Because if they haven't, I bet it's about to become their favorite movie ever, even more than John Carpenter's The Thing. It has everything. Vampires, vampire hunters, a hunchbacked minion who also happens to be a university professor and the leading vampire scientist in the world, buxom babes, and even samurai swords. It literally has everything you could ever want. You guys should totally check it out."
Yeah, and I think I hadn't actually heard of that. And that's a Hammer film.
Yeah,
right?
it's a Hammer film. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of that, like the Trauma and Hammer and kind of some of the weirder, low-budget sort of sci-fi horror type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had actually never heard of that, and I thought, upon seeing that email, I was like, man, that should be a Jupiter Springs series, like the quest for Captain Kronos,
Yeah.
And so
there's only one VH copy in the Pacific Northwest, and we simply must get our hands on it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like this quest, to come up with the VHS and or Betamax, because I'm sure Plunger probably has a Betamax and probably is a snob about it and thinks that Betamax is better because it was.
It is better.
But of course, it lost, the format war. But and of course, I know the guy who sent that one in online peripherally, and I mentioned to him that I wanted to possibly do that series based on his suggestion, and he actually said, he told me he had a better idea, and was going to send it to me. I don't know if he has yet or not. I'll have to check on that, but I was intrigued by his premise that he laid out. So maybe that will be something forthcoming as well.
Yeah, great. Is this the guy that corrected our facts about Iceland at that time?
Iceland, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
that's it.
Thank you for correcting us about Iceland.
He he's emailed us before, and he frequently does comment on our YouTube channel. And we appreciate everybody who writes in. And back to that, to his question, no, I hadn't heard of it either. I don't think I've seen any of the Hammer films.
Well, you're missing out. In fact,
you really are.
With Halloween season stuff right now.
Yeah,
I mean, they're cheesy, but they're big in the 60s and early 70s, and most of them star Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee. but Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter does not. But he's right about everything it has.
I think this guy might be referencing an SNL skit when he says it has everything: vampires, vampire hunters, hunchback minion, and so on. I think that's it's possibly a reference to a character named Stefan from SNL. I could be wrong, but it reminds me of that.
Well, I haven't watched SNL since the 90s, so, not on purpose, just hasn't happened. So, yeah, but no, I'm a big fan of all the Hammer films, and Captain Kronos especially is one of the earliest ones that I saw. And they kind of have a different take on vampires in that one, too. It's more of an age-related type vampire where they suck youth, but don't want to spoil too much.
Well, and I just had a funny idea, and I don't think we should probably do it this way, but I almost imagine Dickey and Plunger going on a quest to find this movie because they think it's at least Plunger thinks it's like a documentary or something.
Based on true events or something.
Yeah. While ostensibly fictional, the actual thematic elements of Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter from the Black Book of the Cow, written in 1679. Yeah, he could totally. Yeah. Yeah, that would be hilarious. Well, anyway, so Joe, that is as much identity as I will give away. Joe, if you're listening, do shoot me that. I'm checking Discord and I'm not seeing that I have been messaged. So yeah, shoot me that idea, man. I wanna read it, and I think our listeners would find us very receptive to doing, ideas that get sent in, because we are excited to get email because we don't get a lot of it, but we could tell people are listening we'd like to hear from them, and I think we would probably be very open to doing some cool idea, whether it was a game that you wanted us to play or an idea for a game. And so definitely,
or if you have a game that you wrote, that's a thing that we do occasionally, obviously. Recently with the Halloween special.
Our Halloween special next week will be a game called The Hateful Place, which is by a good friend of mine, one of the first friends I met when I started getting into independent publishing on my own. Very talented and thoughtful gamer named Dave Mitchell. We'll be playing one of his games next week, and then we've kind of made friends with the guys who did Nuked, and we're online friends as much as anyone's friends on the internet,
Right. Well, and of course Mac, also from the guy who did the co-author of Nuked, had Rangers of the Midvale, which he sent me. So that may be also a thing that gets done in the future as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. He wants to play a game. The best way to do it is just give it to us.
Send us a PDF or a hard copy. Hey, that would be even better because we're kind of fetishists about it. Or at least I know Sean and I.
I'm a bibliophile. Yeah, I like a good book. Yeah.
Well, I do too, but I don't have a lot of hard copies of RPGs just because I have historically not been a dungeon master or GM, so I didn't really have a reason. And other than the games that we play all the time, and I had a Warhammer book that is mutilated and
right
as it should be.
There's like a big gash, and I put like a red marker on it to look like it was slashed open, and that's over. Well, that was over at our friend Wimp's house, and I don't know if that survived the move or not.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure any of the old books are. A lot of our old game books are, dinged up and have critical hits they have taken over the years, and that's just a sign of a well-loved book. As much as I am a bibliophile who likes to keep my books nice, it's always good to have like a beater copy for the table. And I got a GURPS book especially. This is like only a book in theory, anymore. It's just philosophically it's the same book, but it's just held together literally with tape and stuff.
Yeah. One more thing I did want to say. I am also going to put out a separate YouTube video with just this the Dickey Newton podcast, and it's got, I say video because it's got art, AI generated art from Midjourney. So it's not, some of the images are photoshopped a little bit, but other than that, it's mostly just the AI art alone, and some of them are better than others, but it's something to look at anyways. So if you wanted to experience the podcast that way, you can go to our YouTube channel and listen to it.
Yeah, and I will say that I'm reading a lot of the controversy, right now about AI art in gaming communities and the Facebook groups I belong to, and you got people who love it, and you got people who are like, you're taking money away from real artists. And as a guy who's done a lot of books, and I use public domain art, even though I can draw, I draw just well enough to know how not good I am. I'm very picky. My friends are like, well, you're great, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm a big fan of the AI art. I think it's democratizing. I think that it allows those of us who have an artistic vision, it might not be able to bring it to life, to do so. I've heard a lot of people say to really work with those, you kind of have to have a good artistic sensibility to begin with. You can't really just enter random keywords. And that you do need a bit of photoshopping and touching up occasionally. So I'm a big fan of it because it means everybody can do it. And I agree that artists should make money. But if you're a small publisher and you're not going to go the whole Kickstarter route, so you can pay an artist, whatever artists make, to do great art, I think it's a great tool, and it's definitely one I'm going to use in the future.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like magic, because I can't create anything like that. And I think it's very practical as well. I've been creating everything that normally would just stay in my head. Now I can actually visualize it, so it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, if like Wizards of the Coast was using Midjourney or DALL-E to like generate the art for their books, I'd be pretty pissed. But like if you're an indie publisher whose audience, whose budget is $0, and your audience is dozens of people if you're lucky, like what's the fucking problem?
Right,
I mean,
right.
I can't.
There's always some snarky comment though. Somebody shares their AI generated art on Facebook and they're happy with it, and then there's always that inevitable guy who's like, I think you should pay real artists for real art, and I'm like, I get it, kinda, but again, if you're just playing around, who cares? I mean, I'm old enough that I remember when people started doing a lot of video editing and like digital video, and like established directors like Martin Scorsese were poo-pooing it, like, well, now anybody can do it. And I'm like, yeah, anybody can do it. That's great.
That's what they said when people started playing synthesizers.
Right.
They're like, that's not a real instrument. You're not a real musician.
Right. And, I do a lot of music, and I just think it's cool that on my phone I have a better recording studio than the Beatles ever had, Probably.
Yeah, well, speaking of music and stuff, I've been in enough bands with you, Sean.
Yeah.
We've made plenty of art together, and spent more money making it than we ever made.
Right.
So it's like, yes, of course artists should get paid, and people should, but it's like if you're making a portrait for your character in a game that you're playing with your friends, like what should you pay an artist $600 for a picture of your elven archer? Like, what? That's stupid,
right? And
like, who's gonna do that?
And I love it. If I had money, I'd definitely spend it on art. But that's probably about as political as we'll ever get on this program, because that is kind of a swirling controversy right now. If you pay attention to Facebook groups,
which I do not, for that reason, because of I'm just swirling controversies.
Yeah, well, it's about
and if we've caused one here,
there's enough going on, especially in the OSR community, and OSR people know exactly what I'm talking about. That this is about the safest, conversation we could possibly have. So we won't get into any of the rest of that stuff, but yeah.
Well, then, I guess we should get around to playing this episode. So, enjoy. interviewing one Shelley Cunningham, age 14. The date is Friday, October 3rd, 1980, 4:32 p.m. Okay, Miss Cunningham, start from the beginning. Tell me exactly what happened on the night of October 2nd.
Well, I was in my bed reading a Babysitter's Club book, the one where Betsy Soback breaks Claudia's leg, and I had just gotten to the part where Christy squirts ink all over Marianne's white sweater when I heard a strange noise outside my window.
Approximately what time was this?
Let's see. Before that, I was watching an episode of Flurf, which was a rerun, I think, the one where he's kicked out of the Interdimensional Federation of Flurfs for not sharing any of his poop, which came on at 8 o'clock, and then I took a shower after that and couldn't find my jammies, and...
Just the facts, Oh, go on. You were talking about being completely garmentless or something?
Yeah, well, I finally found my jammies in the dryer, and by the time I was in bed and reading my book, it was probably around 9 o'clock.
And can you describe this noise you heard?
It sounded like moaning.
Would you say it was like the moaning of one in the midst of intense carnal pleasure? And can you demonstrate it for me?
Ew, gross. No, it sounded sad.
Okay, so more of a mournful moan. Male or female voice?
Male. Deep.
All right. What happened after you heard the noise?
I got up and looked out my window.
What did you see?
A ghost. It was across the street from my house. I almost choked on my retainer.
Tell me what it looked like.
Just like in the picture books. It was all white and kind of glowy with two dark eyes, and it swayed in the wind. I could see through parts of it.
What was it doing?
Just standing there under the streetlight, facing me, but kind of looking off to the left.
Did you mean floating?
Well, I guess it could have been floating. I couldn't really see the bottom of it because of all the mist that night.
Can you give me an estimate on its size?
It was taller than my dad, who has to duck under the basement doorframe or else he'll bang his head and shake his fist at heaven.
Speaking of heaven, would you like some marshmallow fluff? I happen to have a jar of some in my backpack. It's my favorite food, and I find that in small doses it keeps one's mind sharp.
I can't have sweets.
'Tis a shame. Now, where were we? You saw the ghost outside your window, and what happened after that?
I screamed for my dad and hid under the covers of my bed, but when he ran into the room and looked out the window, the ghost was gone.
So he didn't see which way it went?
No, he never saw it. He said I'd been watching too many Hollywood movies and told me to go to sleep.
I'm not surprised. Adults are often quick to dismiss the paranormal. It's a coping mechanism, because if they knew what was really going on, they'd go mad. Their brains have too much wear and tear, and they break easily. Kid brains, on the other hand, are strong and pliable.
You don't talk like a kid.
I assure you I'm 12, although my body is undergoing significant hormonal changes and will soon be that of a man's.
Oh.
Now, I think that concludes our interview today, Miss Cunningham. If you see the ghost again or have any questions, here's my business card.
What are you going to do about the ghost?
I'm going to convince it to move on, wherever that may be too. Spirits sometimes linger in our world due to a sense of deep longing. That is why they moan in the night. And speaking of moving on, I must be on my way if I am to bike all the way out to Eden Estates and examine the spectral scene before dark. I thank you for your time, Miss Cunningham.
You know, you can just call me Shelley.
No thanks. I prefer not to get too close to my clients. Familiarity leads to intimacy, and intimacy leads to love, and love clouds perception, just like the mist outside your window. I need a clear view of what's in front of me. Good day, madam.
Got me with a spoon.
left Shelley broken-hearted in the AV storage room at Jupiter Springs Junior High and pedaled my Huffy to Eureka Street on the edge of town. I had a job to do. There's a lot of work in Jupiter Springs, California, if you're a paranormal investigator. Sometimes the jobs require a different specialization, such as a laser-powered superhero or 11th level element master, but for this case, a seasoned supernatural detective was called for. I frequently team up with my best friend Plunger, but he was currently attending an academic decathlon in Sacramento, about an hour away. I could have participated too, but I withdrew myself from consideration in protest over the lack of Cape City comic book topics. Plunger's area of expertise is computers and conspiracy theory anyway, so I was on my own this time. The scene of the ghost sighting didn't offer up any clues, but I did verify that the street lamp the ghost was under was visible from Shelley's window and that her story was not an obvious fib to get me alone in a room with her. Now I just had to decide where to go from there. Ghosts usually hang around in old houses, but if someone was killed in a car crash, it's possible their spirit became attached to this place. I didn't think so, though. It would have had to have been very recent, or else Shelley would have seen the ghost before, and I hadn't heard anything about crashes in the news. Maybe it was headed somewhere. If I were a ghost, where would I want to go? Shelley said it was looking to the left, which is to the east. The gym where all the ladies in spandex dance by the windows is in the opposite direction, and I think that's only on Tuesdays. But I know one place I'd go that's right on the way, Gallows Hill Cemetery. By the time I got there, the sun was setting. Luckily, I told my Aunt Judy that I was spending the night at my friend Chip's house. He's a year older than me and a reformed bully. I'd like to sleep over at Chip's sometime, but he doesn't even own a Nintendo. My aunt wouldn't check up on me because she'd be checked out. Wine makes her sleepy. This wouldn't work with my mom, who is the opposite of her sister, but she was in Rome on business. When in Rome... I don't know what that means because no one ever completes the saying. But when in Jupiter Springs, go to the top of Gallows Hill. You can see the whole city from there. It supposedly got its name after every member of the Connolly gang, notorious outlaws, were hanged all at once in a mass execution in the 1800s. They were buried right under where they died, and that was the beginning of a new cemetery, which grew into what it is now. Rows of weathered gravestones, all crooked and green like witches' teeth. I left my bike at the base and scaled the old hill. The wrought iron cemetery gates squeaked like a swarm of rabid bats. It was going to be a long night. I could see downtown in the distance, just as its lights were flashing on. That's where some of my favorite stores are, Comics to the Max and the Starbright Arcade. In the center of downtown stands a statue of Ezekiel Scruggs, the logger baron founder of Lake County. Further off I could see the outline of the hills that my neighborhood is nestled in, Moonstone Hills. On the opposite side I could see the dark tree line of Tolola Pines National Forest. Just last month there was a massive fire in the region and a small portion of the forest was burnt down. It's rumored to be home of all manner of monsters, including Bigfoot and the owl bear. I know from first-hand experience that at least one creature, a violent visitor from Proxima Centauri, is more than mere rumor. It's reality. Terrible, nightmarish reality. As night fell, instead of watching for wandering spirits, I found myself scanning the black, starry skies above, wondering what was out there watching back. When I was 8 years old, my dad left the house to grab a pack of menthol light sucks and never returned. Sometimes I'm told fathers abandon their families, but that only happens to people who live in poor neighborhoods like Sugarbush Valley where Plunger and Chip live. No, I know my dad was abducted by aliens. He had to have been. It's the only thing that makes sense. But I don't think it was by the same species I'd encountered before. They didn't strike me as the beam and ream type. Those guys are from Zeta Reticuli. Midnight came and went, and no ghost made an appearance. The air was cool and quiet, with only the odd hoot from an owl, easily identified. I know my owls. I kept my eyes open for as long as I could by periodically sucking in spoonfuls of marshmallow fluff, but eventually they grew too tired to lift. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I sure as heck remembered waking up at dawn with a back and neck as stiff as a dead man buried under me. Good morning, Mr. Ezra Cornelius Yoder. Now, with more sunlight, I did a thorough search of the cemetery. Unfortunately, the only potential clue I found was what appeared to be a small sample of ectoplasmic goo, but it was trapped in some kind of small, clear balloon, and my instincts told me to leave it alone. My plan had failed. I'd need to change tactics. After riding home to Moonstone Hills, gobbling down a bowl of Overman O's, and leaving my still snoozing aunt a note, I was out the door again. Soon enough, I was back in Eden Estates, my bulging calf muscles powering the bike down Eureka Street. The trees were showing a tinge of fall colors, and pumpkins perched on porches. If Shelley saw this ghost, maybe other people did too. I needed to find other witnesses. An old woman was out doing lawn work, but she only shook her head and smiled when I asked her if she'd seen any ghosts on her street. A little girl started to cry and ran back inside when questioned. Maybe when Shelley said the ghost was looking to the left, she meant her left, and not the ghost's, which would be west. Past Shelley's house, Jimmy Smedley was playing with lawn darts and saw me whizzing by.
Hey, Dickie, I got a case for you.
Can't, already on a case.
But someone stole my Halloween decoration.
Call the police. Jimmy Smedley is 10 and always has snot oozing from his stubby nose. Last year he tried arguing that the brute could beat up Bug Goodsense. Impossible. They're not even in the same universe. Dwick Stevens would have his back anyway. What a stupid idiot Jimmy is. A few houses down, Georgia Parsons' dad was getting out of his pickup truck in the driveway. You haven't seen any ghosts in the vicinity, have you, sir?
No, I ain't seen no ghosts.
Are you sure? Maybe Thursday night?
I said I ain't seen nothing, kid. Wait a second. Thursday night? Weren't no ghosts, but come to think of it, I did see a buck-naked man come sprinting down the sidewalk Thursday evening.
A naked man, sir?
Naked as sin. Some kind of pervert, I guess. Thank God my daughter was already off to bed.
What did he look like?
Too dark to get a good look at him, but he was big and bald like Uncle Fester.
Which way was he running?
East. It's weird that you want to know that.
Just curious. I gotta go now.
Stay away from my daughter.
I wasn't sure what to think about a naked man running around at the same time and place as Shelley's ghost. How did it relate? Or was it just one big dangling distraction? The last house on the left, before Eureka Street intersects with Ponderosa Drive, is Mrs. O'Hannigan's. She's one of the lunch ladies at Hammond B. Middle School, where I used to go. We still keep in touch. I knocked, and she came to the front door, still wearing a hairnet.
Dickie, what brings you here?
Hi, Mrs. O'Hannigan. Just thought I'd stop by to see your beautiful face.
Oh, Dickie, you charmer. I always thought you were sweet. That's why I always gave you a little something extra on your tray. You weren't like those other little shits. You want some pudding cups? I still keep some at home just for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, wait just a second and I'll fetch you some.
Mrs. O'Hannigan didn't just give out regular pudding cups. They were gourmet, made locally at the Jupiter Springs Pudding Factory where Plunger's grandma works. After a few seconds, the lunch lady delivered the goods. 3 cups of primo pudding, which I stuffed into my backpack. Thanks a lot, Mrs. O'Hannigan. You didn't happen to see a ghost outside the other night, did you?
I think I saw that little snot-nosed Smedley boy had some kind of ghost decoration on his lawn. Is that what you mean?
Nah, I'm talking about the real deal.
Sorry, honey. I don't believe in anything that ain't flesh and blood.
I didn't have the nerve to ask her about the naked man.
So what are you gonna be for Halloween this year, Dickie?
I'm thinking about going as Bigfoot, but I can see you're already wearing your costume.
Excuse me?
Aren't you dressed as a beautiful princess?
Oh, Dickie, the girlies must love you. Such a sweetheart. Not like that no-good, rotten, cheating husband of mine.
I do all right. Thanks again for the pudding. See you around, gorgeous.
Oh, quit it.
And with that, I was back on my bike and coasting down the street again. I hadn't picked up the clues I'd hoped for, and it was starting to look like I might not ever solve the case of the Eureka Street spook. At least I had pudding. Jimmy Smedley was still narrowly avoiding getting his skull pierced by lawn darts when I began to pass him for a second time. Reluctantly, I skidded to a stop. I just want to know one thing, Jimmy. Was the Halloween decoration you had stolen that of a ghost?
Yeah, how'd you know?
It's called deductive reasoning. Now, what exactly did your ghost look like?
It was just an old white bedsheet of mine I cut up and draped over a beach ball and then hung from the tree branch. Are you gonna find out who stole it? I mean, I can probably just make another one. I still have the beach ball, but the culprit should be brought to justice. That's what Brendan Bain would do.
Brendan Bain is a supervillain. He thumbs his nose at justice and mocks those who stand for it.
Oh, well, I bet Heatwave could take him.
That's from the Druids of Dragondale RPG, not Cape City. And Heatwave isn't even a person, it's a spell.
Yeah, but if it's cast by Flurf...
No! Wrong universe again. Look, I'll find the bedsheet bandit, but then you have to admit you don't know what you're talking about.
Whatever, that's all kid stuff anyways. I'm mostly into owls now. I could tell you some facts if you want.
Ah! I covered my ears before he could say anything else. If I was going to see this case to its conclusion, I had to remain calm. Trust me, bad things happen when Dickey Newton loses his cool. Now that I was pretty sure the ghost Shelley saw was a large man wearing a modified bedsheet, there was another type of clue I could follow: footprints. When I was on the trail of a spirit, I ignored everything underneath my keds that didn't resemble slime or ethereal vapor. Hunting down a flesh and blood man would be much easier, especially for a master tracker such as myself. No footprints were found around the scene of the crime, but the tree from which the ghost decoration hung was so close to the sidewalk that the thief wouldn't have needed to step on the lawn at all to yank it free. I spent the rest of the day searching the ground on either side of the street, finding only sporadic shoe prints that were too small or faded to belong to the suspect. Something wasn't sitting right with me about this case. The ghost might have turned out to be just a man, but there had to be more to it than that. It had to be paranormal somehow. Maybe the man was a robot from the future. Would have been a nice night for a walk, after all. The only way to know for sure was to keep looking for evidence. Soon enough, just as it was getting dark out again, I found the evidence I was looking for. I'd followed Eureka Street east all the way until it intersected the 152, and then went north until I came to the Europa Roadhouse, a rowdy biker hangout. From there, I crossed the highway and came to a dirt trail leading into Tolola Pines National Forest. The first thing I saw when I hopped off my bike and squinted down at the ground was a perfect set of shoeless footprints. They were big, just like they should have been. Maybe too big. That's when it hit me like a ton of Lego bricks. That's when old Dickey Newton figured it all out. Those weren't just big feet. Those were Bigfoot's big feet. Now it made sense. The forest fire must have burnt all of Bigfoot's hair off and drove him out of his habitat. He ran naked and discombobulated, ending up on Eureka Street, where he was spotted by Mr. Parsons. Then, seeing Jimmy Smedley's bedsheet, he covered his modesty and stood in front of Shelley Cunningham's house, moaning at his misfortune. Eventually, he regained his composure and made his way back into the woods. I knew this case had to be something extraordinary, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I needed casts of these prints. Unfortunately, I didn't have any plaster of Paris with me, but what I did have was marshmallow fluff. In the fading light, I grabbed 2 jars out of my backpack, 1 for each foot, and packed the prints with the fluff. Come tomorrow, that yummy paste would be as hard as concrete. There would be more footprints, to be sure, but I'd done all I could for the day. My stomach rumbled, and I realized I hadn't eaten anything for lunch. For a second, I contemplated slurping up some of the fluff, but then I remembered I had pudding. I'd need the sustenance for the ride home. My Aunt Judy did make me go to Sunday school the next day. Seeing as how my time was limited, what with having put off my homework over the weekend and my mom's plane arriving that evening, I decided to make every second count. I was potentially about to be the first person to conclusively prove Bigfoot's existence and make history. While I am certainly well versed on the subject, I admit that I am not the world's foremost expert on Bigfoot in the Northern California region. That honor belongs to local cryptozoologist and bowling alley manager Bart Garfinkel. He had a brief brush with fame after the gonzo journalist Bing Kingsley wrote an expose on him for Cream magazine in the 1970s. Supposedly, both men rescued a Bigfoot from the back of a Jupiter Springs brewery truck, assaulted a police officer, and stole a motorcycle from a member of the Night Rangers, MC, before riding off in a blaze of glory. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I went traipsing after the rest of those footprints in the woods. I needed an audience with Mr. Garfinkel. The problem was he almost never gave interviews to anyone. He'd speak to me when he saw those big, beautiful fluff cats, though. But when I went to retrieve them, they were gone. I could have cried. My mind raced. Was I being watched? Was someone trying to stop me from getting too close to the truth? Was it the men in black, or the Bigfoot equivalent, the men in plaid? Then I came to my senses and realized my miscalculation. There were a dozen little paw prints around the larger impressions. Raccoons had feasted on the fluff, and now I'd have to meet Mr. Garfinkel empty-footed. I recognized the man behind the counter as soon as I entered the Rolling Thunder bowling alley. The cryptozoologist was almost as big as Bigfoot himself, with short graying hair, glasses as thick as mine, and a Hulk Hogan mustache. I'll take a pair of size 16s, please.
Sorry, we don't carry shoe sizes that large, and I know they wouldn't fit you anyway.
I've got big feet, if you know what I mean.
Yes, you are implying that you have a large penis. Very funny.
No, sir. I'm implying that Bigfoot has a large penis.
Who are you? Are you another cruel child here to mock me? I don't appreciate comments about Bigfoot's penis.
Apologies, Mr. Garfinkel. My name is Dickey Newton. I'm a paranormal detective, and I'm hot on the trail of Bigfoot.
Well, I'll have you know the Bigfoot I met is a female and therefore has no penis. Furthermore, if you're another publicity seeker here to exploit Bigfoot for your own fame and fortune, I won't help you. Bigfoot just wants to be left alone, and so do I.
Please, sir, it's a matter of life and death.
It's not safe to talk here. Men in plaid are everywhere. Follow me to my office.
We walked down a dim hallway and into a small back room. Bart shut the door and sat behind his desk. I sat in front of it while my brain rushed to think of an excuse to justify my slight exaggeration. And then, out of nowhere, something popped into my head. Mr. Garfinkel, I believe my father was abducted by Bigfoot.
Well, I did tell you that Bigfoot just wants to be left alone. However, I admit there have been a few credible cases of abduction in the past.
So Bigfoot really has taken people?
It's extremely rare, and so far all of the abductees were either women or children. Was your father young when you believe he was taken?
He was 42.
Oh, well, there is one case where a Canadian man denounced society and willingly went to live with a clan of Bigfoots who accepted him as their own. I have often dreamed of doing the very same thing.
My dad wouldn't have abandoned my mom and me. He loved us. I know he was abducted.
Well, I guess it's possible.
In the Cream article, it said you communicated with Bigfoot. I need you to teach me how.
I'm not sure that's a good idea. I don't trust kids. They're mean-spirited tricksters and tyrants.
Please, I'm a good boy, I swear. I solve crimes and catch bad guys.
Okay, but if you do meet a Bigfoot, you have to swear not to harm it in any way.
I swear. I just want to ask it where my dad is.
Fine, I can teach you some basic Bigfoot words and phrases.
Thank you, sir. I pulled my Fisher-Price cassette player out of my backpack and set it on the desk, hitting record.
To my untrained ear, the Bigfoot language consisted of random grunts and snorts, but I had faith in Mr. Garfinkel. He said that for only a case of beer, he learned the language from a Toloa shaman called Grandfather Ghost. I left Rolling Thunder and once again headed out to the woods on my bike. My reasons for wanting to make contact with Bigfoot had started out as just a desire to resolve Shelley's case and confirm the existence of a legendary beast. But now I wondered if maybe, just maybe, the excuse I'd told Mr. Garfinkel could actually be true. Was I seriously considering the possibility that Bigfoot abducted my dad? It's a possibility that isn't as crazy as it sounds in Jupiter Springs. Back on the trail that eventually led into Tolola Pines National Forest, I began my hunt for more footprints. They were harder to find than I had expected, but they were there. I'd lose my way occasionally, but then find prints again and adjust my course. It was slow going, but I managed to track them until they stopped outside an old abandoned sanatorium. I'd been there before, many a kid had, but never inside. The kids that have been on the inside of Lake County Sanatorium say that on full moons you can still hear the echoing coughs of tuberculosis patients interspersed with the hair-raising howls of mental patients from when it was an insane asylum in the early 1900s. Thankfully, it was only afternoon and shafts of sunlight filtered through the gaps in the boarded windows and cracks in the stone facade. I could have saved a lot of time if I had just come here in search of the ghost instead of the cemetery. There was a narrow gash in the southeastern wall that I could just barely fit through if I slipped off my backpack. Now it was just me and my flashlight, surrounded by graffiti and beer cans. I tiptoed into another large room and saw several rusted metal bed frames and what looked like a few mildewed rags. In the next room, my heart stopped. Back in the corner, a moon-white ghost hovered and heaved in the flashlight's dusty beam. It only took a few seconds, though, for my rational mind to realize I was looking at a bedsheet covering a tall filing cabinet, its end rippling in the autumn breeze. A closer view revealed poorly cut eye holes. It was Jimmy's. Had to be. Leaving the little office room, I stepped out into a big open corridor. This time what I saw gave me an even bigger shock. Among the scattered litter on the floor was a crumpled pack of cigarettes. Menthol Light sucks, the same brand my dad smokes. Could he really be here? In my excitement, I almost called out his name, but I stopped myself. What if he doesn't remember his name? What if he doesn't remember English at all? Trying my hardest to remember Mr. Garfinkel's lessons, I spoke. Which I hope translated as, "My name is Dickey Newton, and I call upon Bigfoot to release my father, Danny Newton, from bondage and surrender him into my custody forthwith." Suddenly, the large silhouette of a figure rose up at the other end of the corridor and stood in the shadows. At the same time, a stench of BO 10 times worse than Plunger's pits came wafting aggressively in my direction. I held my flashlight steady, but it couldn't penetrate the concentrated darkness gathering round the hulking figure. Then it stepped into the light. It wore a dirty hospital gown. At first I thought it might have been Mr. Garfinkel, but there was no hair or glasses on its head.
Jesus, kid, you scared the living daylights out of me. You having a stroke or something?
You're not Bigfoot.
Well, no, I can't say that I am. Name's Larry. Larry O'Hannigan.
Wait, as in Mrs. O'Hannigan's husband?
Yeah, that's right. You know her?
She's a dear friend of mine.
You gotta talk to her for me. I can't take any more of this. Please.
Why don't you tell me what's going on, sir?
Sure. You see, 3 nights ago, I was making love to my wife and I accidentally shouted out the wrong name. But it's all just a misunderstanding. You gotta tell her that. She locked me out of the house with nothing on, not even my socks. So I ran down the street looking for something to cover myself up with, and I found a
Halloween ghost decoration.
Yeah, how'd you know?
Lucky guess. Go on.
I didn't know what to do. I had no proper clothes, no ID, and no money for a motel. Then I remember this place. My friends and I used to dare each other to go inside when I was about your age. I never thought I'd be squatting here as an adult. Some life I'd made for myself, huh? Dumpster diving at the Europa Roadhouse and crying myself to sleep at night. Oh, God. Oh, Gene. It was a mistake. I'm not cheating on her. You see, as I was in the throes of ecstasy, I started to say, I love you, but I changed my mind and decided to say her name, Jean. What actually came out of my mouth was a combination of the two, Eileen. Jean assumed I'd been thinking about someone named Eileen. Then she accused me of cheating on her. I tried to tell her the truth, but she didn't give me a chance. You know how that temper of hers is. So, will you tell her for me? I could really use a hot shower and some of her home cooking. Yeah, okay, I guess. Thanks, kid. I owe you one. Say, what's your name anyway?
Dickey Newton, Paranormal Detective.
Take care, Dickey.
Before I left, I retrieved my backpack and slipped Mr. O'Hannigan one of my walkie-talkies through the wall gash. Radios, I should say. These are professional, with a long range and multiple channels. I'd radio him to let him know how it went with the missus. Turns out it went pretty well. Mrs. O'Hannigan listened to me explain the mix-up and seemed to accept her husband's word. She cried a little and gave me some more pudding. Then she rushed off to her car and sped off toward the sanatorium. As for me, I headed home. This case hadn't turned out how I'd expected it to, but my thoughts had already started to dwell on domestic matters, such as dinner, homework, and whatever cool Roman souvenir my mom had surely picked out for me. A few weeks later, I biked back to Eureka Street to pick up my other radio from the O'Hannigans. On the way to their house, I rode by Jimmy Smedley's as he was jumping into piles of fiery-colored fall leaves in his front yard.
Hey, Dickie, did you find anything out about my Halloween decoration?
Nope, see you later. Sometimes it's best not to go chasing after ghosts, lest ye become a ghost too, is what I would have told Jimmy had I felt like stopping. I was moving on. Mr. and Mrs. O'Hannigan were standing on their porch giggling and canoodling when I pulled up. Dickie, we thought that was you riding this way.
Hello again, Dickey.
Hello, sir. Hello, Jean.
Here's your walkie-talkie, and here's something special for all your help. I remembered you said you were thinking about going as Bigfoot for Halloween, so I made you a costume.
It's beautiful.
I hope you come by on Halloween night and let us see you in it.
Trick or treat, Bigfoot's feet. Give me some pudding to eat. I tried on the Bigfoot costume as soon as I was back home in Moonstone Hills. It fit perfectly. As I was reuniting my radios together in my backpack, I realized that I'd left my cassette player going after I'd gotten my language lesson from Mr. Garfinkel. It had been recording from within my backpack as it sat outside the sanatorium. Eventually, the tape had run out and it stopped. For some reason, I had the strange urge to rewind it and play it back. And there I heard the faintest of sounds. I could translate it for you, but the message was just for me.
Hey everybody, if you like our podcast, don't forget to leave us a good rating and or review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Spotify, or wherever you're able. Subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at Goonies_world, and check out our website at GooniesWorldPodcast.com. Email us at GooniesWorldPodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.